Good afternoon. Hi, welcome back to day 2 of the After Effects Challenge with me. I'm Ryan Selvy. I'm your host today and for the rest of the week. I'm a motion designer, illustrator, and graphic designer. I live stream a lot on Behance and on Adobe Live, so it's good to have you guys here. I want to say a quick hello to everyone in chat. If you're watching this as a replay, hello to you too. But if you're watching here live, it's great to have you. So a good hello to Robert, Annika, Cody, Oliver, Jack, Frank, RB, Katarina, Clever, Gareth, so many names in chat. It's good to see you guys all here supporting. Also, hello to everyone over on YouTube as well. It's good to have you here. Today, we're going to be continuing our look into creating an animation that loops with digital collage. Digital collage is something that has gotten a bit more mainstream over the last few years, which I'm all for. I really love seeing all of the small snippets of cutouts of video and static image coming together in kind of a Harry Potter style. And so we actually have a example of the thing that we're working towards, and it looks a little bit like this. It is a poor little cow being abducted from a barn, but as it goes up into space, it then turns out to be a loop and continues on and on and on so that it can play on your Reels, it can play on your TikTok, it can play on all these new vertical format that we're getting used to. So yesterday we worked a little bit on isolating some images within Photoshop to then bring over into After Effects. There's a lot of things that you can do in After Effects, but sometimes it's a little bit easier just to kind of prep your assets to then bring it in. Today, we are going to be continuing to focus on masking and track mats because now we need to make everything kind of work together. And sometimes it just makes sense to have those elements natively in After Effects being masked and edited with blend modes or track mats or masks. And I'm going to go over a little bit over the difference between when you're going to use a mask and when you're going to use a track mat, because the animation of the mask is going to be different. And sometimes you want an image to be static and the thing that is showing to move. And then other times you're going to want the whole idea to move with the static image. And let's actually hop right into the program just so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. So yesterday we went ahead and we set up our main composition. We just made it in new composition, and it is 1080 by 1920, which as the time of filming is the standard for most all vertical formats. I'm sure as we continue down this road and screen resolutions get bigger, this will be bigger in the future. But as for now, you can get away with 1080 by 1920 because when you go and you encode and bring it into Instagram or TikTok, that is what it's going to scale it down to anyway. So we're going to do that, and we have it set to 24 frames per second. But if you look at our final image, you'll notice that it has this seamless switch from sky to stars to this river pattern to the flowers. So the way that I like to set it up is I like to set up one comp as my main comp, as you guys saw. And then I like to have it be a series of different pre-comps that we can then use as a way to scale and move them along. So that way it is only scenes that we set continuing to interact with each other and deal with a null object. So that means that even though our composition is 1080 by 1920, we actually kind of want another composition that's going to be much larger. It's still going to be 1080 in width, but let's do something radical like 6,000 pixels high for the composition for this piece. So you'll see that it still fits into the screen if we zoom out all the way. You can go here if you want, and you can do fit. You can also do fit up to 100%, and that works sometimes when you're working with a smaller composition and you don't want it to blow out and be too big. In this case, we're dealing with the opposite, where it's a little bit too small to work with, and we want to get up and close and personal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our assets. All these assets are linked in the description if you guys want to have them. All of them except for one are free for you. The one that is going to be at the very top of this composition, which is the flower stone bed, is actually part of a paid stock. But I'm really also encouraging everyone to please, or not please, I would love to see you have your own take on digital collage and share it in the Discord. We're using the Premiere Discord, and as the week goes on, I'd love to see everything that you guys are creating. In the meantime, though, this is just an example of what we have going on. So I went ahead and I cut out this this media, which is these rocks and these flowers, because I think that they make a really good, nice division into a idea of water and field. It's a natural place where you can find these two things come together. In the picture, it has water below it. It has more flowers above it. But when you're working with collage, it's nice to find these median pieces that actually happen in nature or in the real world, so that it feels a little bit less discombobulating for the viewer. So I went ahead, I cut it out actually in Photoshop that we're bringing in. And I'm just going to go ahead and I want to put this all the way at the top of our composition, because this is the top part that I can see as kind of the completion of the completion of the loop. Frank is asking if the import images used are PNG or PSD. It's really up to you. If you go ahead and you make a Photoshop document with all the different layers, you can do it as a PSD. I have gotten into the habit of actually just exporting things as a PNG when I want to. And I actually have them all as separate files that I then cut out. So I went ahead and changed it to PNG that just pops in. You can kind of tell down here with this little icon that has a little thumbnail of a mountain or whatever. So the next thing that I know we want to have here is we want to have our running river. And so the running river is a vertical video, because that was available, which was cool. It is sideways for whatever reason. So what I did there is I imported it. I made sure that it was below the other one, and I pressed R to get to rotation. Now that's a keyboard shortcut. If you want to see how to get there naturally, you can just click the down switch. It'll be under your transform properties and it'll be rotation. It says 0 and 0, 0. If you don't have this information, just go ahead and click down on expand or collapse the layer switch pane and the control panes, and this will bring in different information that you're going to need for creating these. Can we drag layers directly from PSD files? No, not at this time. You're going to want to save it out as a PSD, and then you can drag the whole PSD in if you'd like to. But you actually have to have them saved so that the system can reference them and check it out. So I went ahead and I changed it to 90 degrees. And I made it in a way that it is now going away from the viewer. I think that this is going to work well. It's going to be a nice blend. We're going to continue to mess with it, but for the time being, we're just going to kind of place it where we want it to be generally so we can check it out. Next, we're going to need some stars. So I have this stars piece. Now this can go above or below, honestly, because we're going to be using masks to have them interact with one another, as well as some blend modes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it above, actually. Put it to 90 just so that we have an idea of like a vertical sense. And then I'm going to do the same thing where we just kind of continue to play around and have this space. So the very last section that we're going to need, though, is the big blue sky. And the big blue sky is going to be a little different because we're actually going to end up pre-composing it. But for the time being, let's just put it in just for placement's sake. And we're going to move it down. We're going to open up our rotation for it. Going to do the same thing. I want the darker side to be at the top. So for this case, we're going to do 90. So it'll be like this. And when we actually go around to it, we're going to end up putting a scene on top of it with the farm. But the way to think about it, remember, is to have these different scenes that are all interacting with one another. And this might actually even loop to be kind of below at the top here. So as we can see right here, though, naturally, this is not a very good transition. You can really tell that these are two completely different images. So what we're going to do is down in our layers panel down here where we have our 4 sources. I'm actually just going to right click here and I'm going to go into pre-compose. And under pre-compose, it'll have this new dialog menu that pops up. It'll say pre-compose and ask for a composition name. I'm going to call it blue sky pre-comp, which is pretty much what it already is going to be. And you can either do leave all attributes in comp 1 or move all attributes. Basically what this is going to do is if you have effects that are already in the layers panel, you're going to want to either bring them into the pre-composition, or if you want those to be added to the pre-comp on the second level that it is. So we're having it at 90 degrees. So I'm actually going to do move all attributes into the new composition, because then when we do that, it's going to then bring it's going to bring it on its side. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is that it is now alongside the rest of this giant composition, which is what we actually don't want. So let's undo this, and let's go back into our composition. Let's go over to our assets, and then instead here, we can do new comp from selection. So let's click that, and instead, now we have just the asset in the dimensions of the asset that we can then actually bring back later into the piece. You can see on the left that it's already made a composition for us called Blue Sky 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our effects, and we're going to pull up an effect called Gradient Ramp. And Gradient Ramp is going to develop a gradient ramp on top of our piece that is going to help us kind of blend these two modes. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can see that the controllers here for the start of ramp and end of ramp are here in the layer controls. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to move this over here. And I'm going to move this over here. That way it kind of goes from left to right. You can also mess with the start color and the end color as long as a blend with an original. I also kind of like to go in here. You can turn off and still use the eyedropper, which is nice. So I just go ahead and I'm going to eyedrop the light area. And then we're going to keep this to black because we want it to kind of move to black, right? So let's bump up the blend with original. We might even want to adjust this a little bit just because we do know that we want it to be a light sky. But we also know that we want it to have it be completely dark at a point. So now we have Blue Sky 2, and we're going to want to go back to our main composition. We're going to want to go back to our big long composition. We haven't named it, which is not great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on these 3 lines, and we're going to go to reveal composition and project. It'll show it over here. And let's just call this Long Boy. And so now we know that whenever we look, we can see Long Boy. We know that it is the one that we want to have, and that's the one that we're working with. You can see that it still has Blue Sky here, but what we can do is we can click on Blue Sky 2, and we can click Alt and drag it over top of Blue Sky, and it's going to replace our Blue Sky now with the new comp that we already had, and it's going to use the same exact parameters that it already was using. So now we're looking at stars, though, and even though we did a little bit of attention to the changing of the colors, it still isn't as nice as we want it to be, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a mask. So one way to do it is you can go to layer, mask, new mask, and it's kind of a more of a process for that. What I like to do here is I actually like to just go into the ellipse tool up here. You can use Q. If it's not an ellipse right here, it might be something else like a rectangle tool, a rounded rectangle tool. All you have to do is hold down on it, and you can select what you want it to be. And you'll notice that when you do that and you have stars selected, all you have to do is you can just click here, and you can drag and create a circle of your liking. Now, whatever is happening in the circle, you're creating a mask, and you can see that that's reflected down here in the layers panel. So what I like to do is I also like to create it, and then I'll double click, and then you can transform anywhere. You'll see that when it gets to the end of the source, it's not going to extend beyond it because it doesn't have information to have. But I like to just do that, and then you can kind of play with it. If you hold shift, you can move it around. You can bring it up and down if you'd like. And we just want to kind of make it sure so that it blends well into the rest of everything else. Just like all the other Adobe programs, we do have a bit control over what our mask can do. And so if you go down and you bring down the mask, you can go down to mask feather, and let's increase the mask feather a little bit. That way that this transition feels a little bit more natural. And we can just continue to play with it until it gets to a place where naturally the stars kind of just begin. Now, this also works up here as well with this if the mask is properly sized to then also adjust into said river flowing. Now, I know we talked a little bit earlier excuse me. I know we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of masks versus track mats. And so the way that it works is you'll see that if we were to go in here and we were to move the stars layer in any way, the mask would move with it. And so the new shape that you have now designated to the mask is now everywhere on your project. So sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you want to maybe move the mask and you want the mask to move, but the image to stay safe. What you can do is you can create a keyframe and you can click it and then move it a little bit forward. Then you can move the mask somewhere else and it will move and only show the image below. And so that's what masks do. Masks are really great to have, but sometimes you'll want to have something be affected by another layer above it, and that's called a track mat. So just for the sake of example, let's get rid of this mask real quick. And we can go ahead and we can take a shape or a source file or anything else that we want. And let's say that we create a circle with a fill in it. You can have it really look like whatever because it's going to be invisible. But you can have the shape layer here. And as long as you put it above stars, we have these little areas here called mode and track mat. Once again, you can toggle these on or off with the expand or collapse transfer and controls pane. And this is going to be a way that you can create a track mat to a circle or whatever you want. So it has its own pick whip. That's what this little guy is called. But you can also pull up a drop-down menu and you can say, I want your shape to be designated by this other object. That's what a track mat does. So you can take this little squiggle called a pick whip. I can just drag it onto shape layer 1. And now stars is only going to show up wherever that circle is then placed. Now, the beautiful thing about track mats too, though, is that it doesn't only have to align to one layer, which is actually what Valdair is bringing up in the chat, because we've recently had an update with After Effects that allows us to go in here and you can actually pick whip or track mat more than one object to one object. So right now we have both flower, stone bed, and stars assigned to this circle. And you will see that if we look where Flowerstone Bed was, it's no longer there. So you can go in, and if you drag it down, it'll magically appear. And now, if you were to animate this circle moving around, it only kind of shows the areas that are visible within the circle of itself. So what we're doing for this one, we don't necessarily want to do with track mat, but it is nice to know that it's there. And if you need to rely on a different type of masking and shaping of an object, which you might in your own collage, it is nice to have that and be able to go and adjust it accordingly. We're going to go ahead real quick, though. We only have a few minutes left, and we're going to undo that. We're going to bring it back to what we have as a circle. And what I want to do is I also want to make these feel a little bit more connected, because even though we have the nice connection of the two, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's that real. So I'm going to head up and I'm going to hit Control D, and it's going to create a separate, a duplicate of the same asset. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip it. So we're going to go to the transform properties. You can go to here and you can do scale. You can unlink the two, and then you can change this to a negative of whatever it is. That's one like technical way to do it because it's X and Y. There's also a way where you can go in, you can go to transform, and you can just do flip vertical. It'll do the same thing. It's adding it, it's changing it, but it's just two different ways of getting there. Now, when we were talking earlier about blend modes, that's the thing that's right next to track mats. And so this obviously doesn't look very right, and we want it to look through it. So what we can do is we can press this drop-down menu, and we have all of these different ones that are applying the image to the images below it. So let's go here. We want to make sure that the, just for our sake, the flower stone bed is going to be right above running river, and we're going to change this mode to something like soft light, And we can see that immediately it looks a little bit more authentic. But when we play it through, oh man, it's not moving. Like, that's not how it would look if it was actually working. Fortunately, After Effects also has an effect called Ripple. And in Ripple, you can apply it to just this newly added thing that we have here in Flower Stone Bed. And it will create a rippling effect onto the Flower Stone Bed that we just created. Let's see. Oh, because actually, don't do what I just did. See, I went to the animation presets under text and had Ripple because I searched for it. But there's actually a text one that is an auto-generated for text, and there's one for images. So we're going to actually go down here into Distort. It's under your Distort filter. And then we're going to go to Ripple right here. Now, when we do that, as always, our controls pop up in our effects control panel over here to the left. And if we zoom in, it's kind of doing something, but it's not doing the amount of ripple that we actually want. It's not the direction that we want. And so I'm immediately going to look at where the center of my ripple is. And one easy way to also just like click on it and not have to deal with numbers is you can click these little crosshairs here. And I can say, all right, the rippling is actually not even happening anywhere close to here. The ripple is really happening down here at the bottom where the water is kind of expanding from. And that's where we want the ripple to also showcase in this one. So let's click here. And even though it's all the way outside of the layer that we're adjusting, we can actually even just bring it down here. And it will then adjust accordingly up to here. But our radius is really tiny. So we're going to have to increase our radius until we can see that the adjustments are happening at the layer of the rocks as well. So we'll play. And it's still, it's getting there, but it's not what we want. So we're going to actually play around with the wave height. And you can see how it adjusts. It can make it smaller and bigger. And you can also do it with the wave width. And the wave width and height, when you bring the two up, is really going to be kind of finding the sweet spot where you kind of want to match it a little bit. And as we talked a little bit yesterday, like we have the benefit here of it's going to be small, it's going to be moving, but just having this small kind of adjustment here now, you can see that this looks a lot more connected with the two than previously shown. What we can also do here, as we scroll down, is we're noticing that maybe the running river needs to also have a little bit of a blend into the stars as well. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to duplicate it again. We're going to bring it above the stars. And I'm going to make a pick whip of the track mat to the stars, because we're saying this is only when the two are running over each other. This is what I want it to look like. And I'm going to go in here and we're going to say like soft light or something, or we'll do, what else could we do? Oh, no, that was the wrong one. Running river, we changed that to like soft light. And then you can see that now the combination of the two is a little bit harder to discern, which is nice. And now with both the stars, which we want to still have visible, and with the sky, everything is a little bit closer to one another. Now, we have this more or less in a place that we'd like to have it. We can now go ahead and bring that back into the main composition that we have. So, similar to when we renamed it, what we can do here is we can say, click on these three hamburgers, reveal composition and project, and then we can go ahead and bring Longboy into our main composition. If you can't see the outlines of it, you can click this little toggle to bring on transformation properties. And now we have a composition that we can then mask. We can then keyframe to move up and down within our said composition. So we'll also go ahead, we'll put the farmland in there as well. Tomorrow we're going to play a little bit more with animating and bringing some static images to life. But this at least gets you kind of at least on a start to the idea of a loopable background that can then live in your composition. And it deals with pre-comps, track maps, and masks to really take a hold of bringing all these assets together and making them feel a little bit more cohesive. I will be here for 2 more days. So we will have a little bit more work to do, and we have a lot to get done. We're still going to try to get to a place where it looks something like this. Please meet me over on the Premiere Discord all through this week. I'd love to see your progress, whether you're doing the same thing as me or you're doing your own digital collage. The world is your oyster for you to add ripples to, you to add masks and track mats to. And I really want to see kind of how you bring different elements together as one. Tomorrow, we're going to be adding the little spin to the UFO, and we'll also add some beams real quick. We'll do a little rotoscoping. So it'll be a fast-moving day tomorrow, but it is going to be a fun one. So I hope to see you here again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thanks for being here. Thank you to everyone that was saying hello in chat and asking questions. Please continue to ping me and hit me up on Discord if you have any other further questions. Thank you guys, and see you tomorrow. Bye!